Ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the line for the second time in about a year, Alicia Dennis is on the line. And Alicia, the reason I say that, I went back and looked because I was like, I think we talked before the last season of People Magazine Investigates came out, and we did.
Yeah, I think we did, and I don't know why it's taken us so long to talk again. We should be doing this more often.
Alicia, I missed you.
I've missed you too. So much has changed. So much has changed in a year.
I know, right? Well, let's People Magazine Investigates, you got a new season out, and I want to hit that here in a second because it is the 7th season. And going back and looking at listening to the interview we did last time, it was a lot of, I was asking about how you guys kind of pick cases for this and all that. When the 6th season wrapped up and everybody saw everything you guys did, what was kind of what people saying about it? What was kind of the word on the street?
What was exciting about that season, we had a situation where one of the cases that we looked into and we featured led to an arrest. And so the district attorney talked about People Magazine Investigates shining a light on this particular case and helping lead to an arrest. And so that's very exciting when something like that can happen. And I really think that just the format of our show, where we have so many journalists who are working on these cases talking to you about it from their perspective and going sometimes to the actual crime area or on the ground reporting, I think all those things were important at the end of last season.
Alicia Dennis from People Magazine Investigates on the line with me right now. So the 7th season has premiered. It premiered with a special 2-hour episode. Let's talk about it a little bit because it is dark.
It's really heartbreaking, and it's the story of these 3 little girls that were murdered at Girl Scout camp in Oklahoma at Camp Scott, and it's one of these situations where for years parents would send their kids off to camp, and nobody thought that it was dangerous or scary. You know, the kids are going and they're bonding and they're learning about nature, and it's just not something to worry about. You just did not put that on your list of things to worry about. And in the summer of 1977, these little girls, Lori Farmer, Doris Milner, and Michelle Gousset, were in a tent together. They didn't know each other. This was their first night. And it was on the outskirts of the campground. And sometime in the middle of the night, a killer crept in from the woods and murdered them. Their bodies were found the next morning by one of the counselors. And this completely changed that community forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
I mean, as a father with 2 kids, one who's 8, it's just, I can't wrap my mind around that. And I know you've probably heard that a lot today with the different interviews you've done, but it's just, yes, it would absolutely change everything about that community and the people involved.
Everything. And the poor counselors, who woke up that morning and said, wait, did I hear something that I should have gone and looked into? Because kids at a camp, everybody's making noise and, giggling and screaming, and you just never know, and they're never going to ever stop thinking about it. But I think in this case, what we're doing is we're looking really closely at the different clues, the searches that happened. There was an arrest in this case. There was a trial, but there was a not guilty verdict. And so we're talking to the families. A lot of times people move on from these horrible, moments in time, but the families don't. This is something that stays with them forever. That seat is always empty. And so giving them the opportunity to share their stories and their memories and have their kids' legacy not just be this horrible thing is, I think, part of what's important about the work that we do and what happens within the season is that people are able to come and share their stories in that way.
Alicia Dennis from People Magazine Investigates on the line with me. The 7th season has begun. A new episode will be coming out every Monday, it looks like. What else are we covering this season?
We are looking at a couple of cases of serial killers this season. There's one that's coming up really soon on the I-70 killer. And this was a case where a killer was targeting this area between Indianapolis and Wichita, Kansas, and using that corridor as a hunting ground as well as an escape route.
Oh, wow.
which is really unique and unusual and very difficult for investigators, because usually when you go to a crime scene, you're trying to connect that person to the community.
Yeah.
Who did the victims know? That kind of thing. And this was just different because this person seemingly just was randomly hitting different stores in those strip shopping centers throughout that area. And so that case is very, very fascinating.
Alicia, which one of these stories has really stuck with you this season? I know we talked a little bit about this last time, but is there one that really, I don't want to say bothered you, because, I mean, let's face it, if you're not bothered by some of the things that happen in this, you got to question yourself a little bit. But is there one that really stuck with you?
Well, I think for me, we have an episode about what's called the yogurt shop murders. I don't know if you're familiar with this case. This was where 4 teenage girls who worked in one of those, I can't believe it's yogurt shops in Austin, Texas. Okay. They were all working there, and they were closing up the store, and someone came in and killed them and then set the store on fire so that the evidence would be destroyed. It wasn't all destroyed, but the reason it sticks with me is I lived in Austin. I wasn't there when this case occurred, but I moved there after and did a lot of reporting out of Austin for about 16 years. And what was really interesting to me is how much people still talked about this case. Like, this case was super in the front of people's minds, even though Austin isn't a small community. It's a pretty big city. But it was one that people talked about often. And so that one, I think, because of my connection to that area and having lived there and been around those people so much, I think it kind of stands out this season for me.
It forever taints that place, because whenever you drive by it or, are around it or see something about it, it's not the yogurt shop anymore. It's the place that someone tried to burn down or, murder, 4 people.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened with that first case that we were talking about in Camp Scott, the Girl Scout murders. Yeah. That camp became an abandoned ghost town. It just, when you look at it, it just seems like it's haunted, and it kind of is, in a way, that something so awful happened there. But you're right. Yeah, it does really just change everything. It changes the people, it changes the place. And there's a lot of stories, I think, to be told within the intricacies of those cases.
Alicia Dennis on the line with me right now. She's from People Magazine Investigates. New season out now, or at least it has started now. You have 10 episodes this season. How many stories did you guys whittle that down from? I want to say we talked about this last time too, but I think this is kind of fascinating because you imagine the amount of stories that come to you guys and how you pick this stuff.
It's really, really hard because, we're a 24/7 news site. So we're covering stories all the time on people.com. We're covering stories in the magazine. We are in court rooms, sometimes watching trials and covering those. And so we try to do the combination of different types of cases within a season, right? We try to make sure that they're not all located in one spot so that they're around the country. So those are 2 elements. And then the third element is, do we have the right people who are willing to talk about this on camera? Okay. And that's really tricky because people sometimes don't want to do that. If they want to talk to a reporter in their house or on the phone, that's so different than doing it with cameras and lights around. And so sometimes people have to take a minute to decide if they're comfortable with that. And investigators too. Like, investigators sometimes can't talk about certain aspects of the case because they're under a gag order or there's certain things they can't share. So, some of that goes into trying to figure out which ones we should do and which ones are going to have to wait for the next season.
Do you guys have any rules when it comes to, when you bring a story? And the reason I ask, because, some of these folks, they do these crimes because they want the recognition.
Right.
Is there anything like that where it's like, no, we're not going to talk about this person or this case because, it gives credence to what they're doing, or, something like that?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good question. It's really important to us to tell stories that are through the eyes of the victims' families and the people connected to the victims in these cases. These are the people who are, the heart of these cases that we don't want to lose sight of. And so we're called People Magazine, and we're not just TV stars and movie stars and rock stars. We're also telling real stories of real people and their everyday lives, extraordinary things that have happened to them. And so you're right. We're not focusing on the killer, the serial killer per se, and what their life was like or whatever. We're really trying to focus on the victims' families. And, we don't publish any kind of manifestos that a killer puts out or any kind of whatever. We're not really digging into the mind of the killer. This is really about the human impact of this on the people whose lives were shattered.
I have another question. I want to make sure I'm properly wording this.
Okay.
Do you or any of the staff, like when you get ready to do these stories, have any trepidation about doing them for possible, I don't know, blowback or, maybe the killer is still at large or something like that? Is there anything like that you guys have to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, we will have a little bit of that where you're having to ask or wonder. But for the most part, I think journalists are the kind of people that want to ask the questions and want to tell everybody the information, and they have kind of like a bring it on attitude about it, Okay. We make sure that everybody's safe, and we're not trying to send anybody into a situation that isn't.
And I'm not, and believe me, I'm not saying that you guys would or whatever, but I just, with these type of topics sometimes, I mean, even in radio, when you're getting ready to do a joke, sometimes it's like, should I do this? Should I not? You're always kind of walking that fine line, and I imagine that you guys have your own version of that line. And
yeah, we do. You're right. And you also have to look out for your own mental health and the fact that if you're immersing yourself in this darkness and looking at it, and you're spending all the time with these families who are talking to you about the worst, most nightmarish things, you do have to pay attention to not get so soaked up in that it negatively affects you, right? So, we try to make sure that, our journalists are paying attention to that, and every once in a while doing a story that's maybe lighter or maybe a little more fun or maybe about, a hero or, maybe about something like that, right? Because you can't, I think I said this to somebody the other day, in order to do these stories well, you have to care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you care about them, then you're going to feel this stuff, that you're writing about and you're reporting about. And so you can't feel bad all the time, right? So you really do have to find a balance.
Alicia Dennis from People Magazine Investigates. 7th season has begun. We'll have all the links at the bottom of the page. Alicia, seriously, thank you so much. I always enjoy talking to you.
Oh, I always enjoy talking to you, too. We should do this more often than once a year, don't you think?
I was going to ask something, but I'll do it off the air. Alicia, thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thanks.